Blind squirrel will always find a nut. Yeah, that's right. So we take that, talk about the Powerball. What's the purpose of Powerball, right? What do we use that for? So Powerball is for where this is where we can come in, and Powerball is like raises money for education. It's
Mhm.
entertainment for people. What's in it for the customer, i.e., the people that buy lottery tickets? Yeah, those people are trying to win $1 bazillion and change their life.
That's right.
Just lucky.
Change the world.
Entertainment is what a lot of gambling there. That's what gambling is. It's called entertainment, even though people do have a problem with it, where they
Not
it's
another
like
one too is tax revenue too.
there we go. Yeah, tax revenue. So if somebody wins, fifty
30. I
percent
think it's
goes to government. Well, you get your federal government gets 30%, right?
that's
And
right. I
then you
saw
get
that.
your
Yep.
state governments get something, your city governments get something, unless you live in Florida
Ooh.
or some
Oh,
other
really?
amazing state that doesn't have state taxes. Yeah, then you don't pay
They
state
won't
tax.
take anything from it, from the Powerball at all
The
in
state doesn't
Florida.
know.
Wow,
It's because it's
interesting.
income at that point. It's income.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what's in it for the customer.
Well, if you win, can we split it then?
No, you didn't buy a lottery ticket. Don't worry. There's going to be a jet coming out to pick you up, you and Rachel, to come and join me in my private island. So if we then map the supply chain from customers, so you got the person who buys the ticket. What do they buy? They got to go to a distributor, somebody who prints these lottery tickets. So customer goes to here is Publix. They go there or many other chains, gas station store. Go to a machine and they say,
Mhm.
give me a ticket. To get a ticket, you can get what is it? A quick pick, which they just push a button and also they print the ticket out. So you got to have paper to
It
print the
gives
ticket on.
gives you the number, yeah. Chooses
Yeah,
the number randomly for you, right? That's an
right.
option. Yep.
And then you got the other cards that are scanned with the numbers that you pick. So there's another. So you have paper, right? So there's some raw material for paper to get your numbers. And then with those numbers, you got to have a machine that prints it. So then you got to purchase the
Mhm.
machine. And what I found was that there's only, I think there's a company in Georgia that makes these machines. But then you have to have security, right? You got to make sure that they're valid, all those things. So there's a bunch of
Yeah, there's
security
two
behind it,
machines, right? Yep. There's two specific they use.
right? They can print, and that's the Powerball. And each state has their own because they have their own game. Because I was in South Carolina and I bought tickets with my mom, and then I came back to Florida and tried to use the same scan card in Florida, and they said nope,
Wow.
can't use this card.
Yeah, 45 states
Fuck.
and District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and U.S. Virgin Islands.
Yeah. So it's a
So
lot,
it's
a lot of
pretty big
everyone.
thing.
So then you got to program the machines, right, to spit it out. So you got people involved programming. So there's go there. So that's just the machine side. Then you got to build the machine. So that's got to go to some manufacturing. And to build a machine, you've got circuits, chips, microchip ore,
Yep,
right?
that's right.
Metal, printing ink. So that's another thing. Um, and all that stuff goes. And then everyone buys their ticket. So you got to buy that. And then everyone waits. And then to draw a Powerball. So then you got to make the Powerball. There's like, again, a company makes these Powerball machines. I did some research. The Powerball
Mhm.
has like 4 machines they buy every 1 year or 2 years, or I think 6 months, maybe every 6 months. They buy 4 new machines. They randomly pick them so that there's no, hanky panky going on there, crazy stuff.
Yep. Mhm.
And to get the balls, and the balls are rubber. So now you got the machines. Again, you got circuits, metal, plastic to build the machines. And you got the balls themselves, which are rubber. So there's even another thing that all this is secure and it has to be trackable to make sure that nobody's getting in
Traceability,
there.
yep.
Yeah, make sure they're not messing with the machines.
I mean, you think about because
So
they want to really make sure there's a amount of fairness, right? I think that'd be the biggest
absolutely.
thing that they
Yeah,
want to make sure, right? Because you don't want to be questioned that this person winning millions of dollars cheated or something. Like, you don't definitely don't want that. That people stop participating. So I think that'd
yeah,
be another major focus of that Powerball would be make sure that it's secure as possible. Well, it needs to be secure.
absolutely.
Period. Actually.
Yeah, they make sure everything's secure. Everything's secure. So security, so they're all chain of custody, tracking, tracing, all those things to make sure that nobody's messing with these things.
Yeah.
And then go to raw materials. rubber to make the balls, metal to make the machines, circuits to make the the programming that goes inside the
For the
machines,
machines, yep.
paper goes in the machines, ink to print the tickets, and all that is the supply chain for Powerball. So what's the impact of this, right? So what am I missing? Did I miss anything mapping it?
No, I don't think so. No, that sounded pretty good. Yeah, the ink, everything. Oh, I got one. One thing that people also don't think about too, that I always talk about, is supply chain doesn't only just physical, tangible products. We're also talking about managing information. And so a lot of this information, right, from
Right.
all these vendors, from all these
Oh yeah.
ticket people, right,
Right.
from all these different entities, from these different states, right? They have to manage all of that. And like we go back to
Yeah.
security, you got to also make sure that is secure too. So you got information technology involved. That supply chain talking to different people, right? Different supply chain experts talking to other supply chain experts across the country. So that's a very
Yeah.
interesting thing, that it's also about the information that is tracked, and going back to tracing that back. That's
So what
also
do we
important to
call
track.
that? So the information chain is that's a supply chain. It's the supply of information, a supply of data.
Hmm.
So like you said, tracking all that stuff because you got
And the integrity of it.
and the integrity of it is so important to make sure that it's good data and that when the person wins, they actually win, right?
Hmm.
They win.
And there's no
And
room for
that
cheaters. That's the big one, right? Oh, I got
right.
5 different people got the same winning
Well,
ball
they do
numbers.
that.
Like, what the?
But they do that. But I mean, they're like there's been multiple winners in the past, right? And then they just split it between the winners across the board.
Oh,
It's like what was that Jim Carrey movie where he was God or talking to God, and he's like, I
liar,
wish
liar, something.
everyone.
Oh
No,
no,
no, it
that's
was
different.
one. Maybe it was called God with Morgan Freeman, and he wished
Yeah.
that everyone would win the lottery. So everybody won the lottery, and
Oh
everybody
yeah,
got
yeah.
$1. They're like, what? You know. Um, so that was funny. But yeah, data
I
is
know.
definitely important.
Bruce Almighty. Bruce Almighty.
Bruce Almighty, that's it. Bruce Almighty. Bruce Almighty.
Wait, the thing though, too, though, right? If the integrity is not there, and then you need to split with 5 other people, watch how fast those 5 people get, pissed off because it's
Yeah,
like
we
let
got
the
to
other people
verify
want
it.
to win. Yeah,
You got to take your ticket.
definitely.
You got to, it's got to be verified that was an actual ticket. The store that sold you the ticket's got to verify that they printed it. The store that sold the ticket has to be a verified vendor of lottery tickets.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's a lot of fake ones out there that are just taking in the money and not actually part of the lottery. Um, so yeah, there's a lot going on there. So what's the impact of the supply chain? So with all this process, what's the economy or the economics of this supply chain?
I think we did talk a little about that, right? About the tax revenue. It's a big
The
one. I
tax
actually,
revenue.
yep,
Yeah,
definitely. It's people, that one person, I'll get all this money, and hopefully they share and spend
right.
some of that money within the state, right? So that's
Well, that goes
revenue
back to
taken.
they get the money, they spend it, which then creates a bunch of jobs, right?
Or like a
At
little economy right there for that person who's spending
least
their,
for a day or two, till they try to
I
spend it
said-
all. They try to spend it all. You
so go to
know,
Vegas and gamble it some more, maybe. Make the
yeah.
casinos
I
richer.
mean, but have you ever thought if you win $1 billion, how long would it take you to spend it?
24, 25 minutes, maybe.
You think?
No, no.
I mean, you think about it. What is it? Think about it. Okay, one
Well, if you could,
billion, right?
also put it in some safe assets, some safe investments, and just live off
So we'll
the
just say
money
you
that it
spend
creates.
$1 a second. $1 a second. So divide by 60 seconds. Divide by 60 minutes. Now we're at days. 277
Days.
277,777 days
Wow.
or hours. Now we got to divide that by 24. 11,574 days. You have to divide that by 365. It would take you 31 years to spend $1 billion by spending $1 per minute
Wow.
consistently. No resting, just spending $1 per minute. That's a long time.
But
That's
mad people
spending what?
manage to do it.
Yeah, they do. Why not? You know, or that's no, $1 per second. How many seconds are in a day? 24 hours times 60 minutes times 60 seconds. That's $86,000, $86,400 per day.
Oh.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of spending. I mean, you can only buy so
Mhm.
many cars, right? You can only buy so many houses, but it could be a good day. It can be a good time.
Make the world a
Yeah.
better place, hopefully.
Hopefully, they say money makes people their true nature really comes out. When they do that, they say that. So there's definitely a supply chain, and just talk about the supply chain of the Powerball, right? They got so impact of the supply chain. Not only people making paper, people making machines, people making ink, people distributing the machines, people maintaining the machines. You got the clerks who are selling the tickets. You got the stores who
And then yep.
have the machines in them so people can go to them to buy the tickets. So
People
there's a
doing the
lot of economic.
drawings. Yeah.
Yeah,
People
people doing the drawing,
validating. Right. There's
all that.
people the distribution of the tickets. So there's a whole distribution network, which would
Yeah.
be definitely interesting, right? To
Because
really
even the
understand
paper
that.
has to be secure, right? It has to be a special kind of paper, just like the
Everything.
dollar, right? The dollar has to be a special kind of paper. You can't just have a dollar.
That's
It's got
right.
to be on the right paper and the right magnetic strip and all that other stuff. Yeah, so it's impacting a lot across. What is the impact of supply chain? And what is supply chain impacting? So, and then we go down the PMESII-PT.
Yep.
Politics, definitely. Tax revenue, military, not so much. Economics, we talked about those. What's the S stand for?
The M.
Soci- M is
Political,
military.
military, economic, social,
Social.
infrastructure, information, physical terrain, and time.
So social, definitely social, impacting
Oh yeah.
social information,
Oh yeah. Like we talked about,
infrastructure.
right? Sending out information back and forth. Yep. And then
Yeah, so it's a lot of impact there. And then what's the risk inside the Powerball supply chain? So the main focus of the supply chain really is security, right? That
mhm.
everything must be secured and controlled. So the
And that's I
balls
think
have to be good.
the multi-state lottery association, right?
That's right.
That's the main one
Yeah.
that has to handle all of that. It's kind of like the headquarters unit. It's like in the
Hmm.
military, that the headquarters managing everything and setting everything out and getting everything going. So
Yeah, it controls the vendors who are able to, and then one of the, if you saw that page, it picked one vendor. They said it was a Chinese knockoff. That even though it was cheaper balls, the balls were of lower quality, so they stopped using them altogether.
mhm.
So the balls, which draw the numbers that produce the winning numbers, the paper has to be correct. So that has to be great. The
The ball,
distribution,
yeah, the balls have to be the right weight and size, right? So that's another
yeah,
quality aspect that has to be
so
really
high quality.
stringent.
The
Yep, just like with
machines have to
aircraft
be,
stuff.
the machines all have to collect the information and pass that data to where it needs to go. So that's another one. So there's a lot of strengths inside the security side of it, and the
Hmm.
weaknesses really are just the vendors are going to be where these things are manufactured. What was that movie? What was it? One of Ocean's 11s or Ocean 12s, where they sent those guys down to Mexico to change the dice. Remember that?
Yeah,
You know, where the manufacturer is like the secure point, and so they had to go in there and do something to the dice to make them to where they didn't
yeah,
play
looks like
right.
yeah, it was Ocean's 11. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, production
But,
logistics
and
moving
I got
on.
one for the weakness too, though, because it is, so stringent. I actually saw something actually in 2022, the drawing for the Powerball 1.9 billion was actually delayed due to security protocol
Oh yeah,
issues. They didn't say exactly what it was, of course, but that can
yeah.
also, because of that being the strength and because they're so in tune with that, if there is any kind of issue, right, they abort
Checks.
mission.
Yeah, they say nope. Checks and balances across the board. So
Yep.
lots of things there. And then, so some of this I wrote down like key vendors to watch. I think there were a couple. What were they? Uh,
And this one's for the actual ball manufacturers.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The one I sent to you yesterday. That one link. The
Yeah, that was pretty interesting to see that one too about the different types of ball manufacturers, like the different outputs that they have, right? The concerns that come with that.
And put that up on the screen here.
And you have it? Oh, you found it?
I found it. Let me pull it up here. Shift screens.
It's interesting to see that a lot of stuff is going on, a lot of behind the scenes that people don't take into
Yeah,
account. Just like what, before COVID, supply chain and everything was on, when all the product was already there for you, nothing was out of stock. Nobody really cared or knew what supply chain was. Now that
right.
stuff is now seeing, now people are concerned about supply chain because now their stuff is in there. Just like with
Yeah,
this Powerball, the moment something doesn't work, now you want to know what's the ins and outs of it.
yeah. You're trash. You're like, where was the failure? Where was that point of weakness that got exploited across the board? And that's kind
Yeah.
of why I want to have this format where we take just things that are in the news and let's just have a conversation about the supply chain. And through our conversation, we can talk about, the fundamentals of supply chain, which people can find on scm.jobs, the resilience of supply chain, where people can find your book at hnap.com, hknapp.com. So these are all ways to understand supply chain so that you can find those points of weakness to make sure that your organization is covered and protected. And it's going to be, like we talked about with toilet paper, he who knows first wins, right? The person that recognizes there's going to be a shortage before everyone else can get in there and secure their supply chain before there's a problem. And
Yeah,
this is
it's
where we have
huge.
the manufacturers here, and these are the guys that make the balls. Um,
And I
all
thought found it interesting that it's like these places you never really heard of. You think
yeah,
it'd be
right.
like just some like big company somewhere or something, that made these,
Yeah,
but no, it's just like these
yeah.
smaller companies. They
Netherlands.
look
This is
like.
this is Netherlands. So NL Netherlands, right there. So yeah. So all that's good. Yeah. So this is good stuff. Um, but I want to point out, what was that one manufacturer that was not quality? Here was the one. Yeah, the most economical choice. However, copycat. So that it tells us that the organization has security in mind. They're looking at all this stuff. They understand
Quality.
why
Yep.
it's so important to make sure that they're not getting things, because I mean you have $1 billion on the line and people are spending tickets. There has to be integrity in the system, and if there's any question about the integrity, they're going to question the validity of it, and that's going to just start, like you said, people just say, well, this is all rigged, I'm not playing, and then
Hmm.
people just
There
don't
goes the whole
play.
thing.
Then
That's the
there's
thing
no
too, right? You're
game.
spending billions, but yet you're worried about a couple dollar ball. You know what I mean?
Well,
That could like totally throw off this $1 billion industry because you wanted to cheap out on a ball and the
yeah,
quality is not there, and they found out, right? And the whole, like, go back to integrity now. The whole integrity of the entire game, or for the Powerball, is now in question, and up, like you said, people don't want to play. Another thing I found out was
right,
interesting too, Randy, was the fact that every time there's not a winner, the pot gets bigger by several
yeah,
million, right? But the interesting part is that actually gets more and more people to want to go because, like, oh, I think I might have a chance now. So it
right,
just like continues to compound and get bigger and bigger if there's
yeah,
no winner. So it's pretty interesting. It's like, and everybody wants to win, but nobody wins. More people want to get in, and then you can even win more. So
right,
it's pretty smart
yeah.
way to structure the game.
Well, that's the idea, and like we talked about, understanding the different ways to do this, to where we can track everything that's going on, and understand the supply chain itself, and
Hmm.
knowing where the centers of gravities are and the strengths, and and from the layman's terms, understand the supply chain. Oh, okay, like you said, oh, this is how it all works. I go and buy a ticket, I win or I don't win. End of story. No, there's a lot more going on behind the back scenes to make that
Hmm.
happen, and that's everything from serving dinner on your dinner table
Oh
to
yeah,
large productions, military operations around the world. What it takes to feed people, to make all this stuff work. There's a supply chain everywhere, and it's
for
important for people to
everything.
understand it. And for
Hmm.
those of you that are listening and paying attention, put in the comments, questions or supply chains that you're interested in, and we'll take a look at those and we'll add those to our future broadcast when we talk about different supply chains and get down and to just talk about them in layman's term. We're not going to talk about the technical stuff, because supply chain can get really, really technical, way down in the weeds. And that's when most people get their eyes glassed over, like, I have no idea what you guys are talking
Next.
about. Yeah. But when you break it down like we just broke it down about the Powerball supply chain in like 20 minutes, like, okay, this is everything that's going on. Okay, this makes sense. But then take those fundamentals and apply them to your situation, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad trying to put dinner on the table, supply chain to make that happen, all the way up through your business and the organizations that you're involved with. All of it's involved in a supply chain. So,
Yep. It's
um,
interesting to having like a global supply chain now, right? Which we're seeing actually has some weaknesses in it as well. But that's what makes it
yeah,
really complex. Like even just the balls or even just the paper for the tickets. Imagine how many suppliers has to go through in order to get just a simple ticket with some numbers on it.
yeah,
It can go multiple places, right? Even down to like the ball. You're talking about the ball, the manufacturers, the different quality. All that has to really be taken in account. People don't really realize that. And even when
yeah,
they're watching it on the TV show, you got the people working there that are actually, doing the show, pulling out
right.
the ball, all that
Yeah, we didn't even
stuff.
talk about that production, did we? We didn't talk about the fact that cameras, people drawing the balls, that whole
Oh yeah.
security there, everything involved in making that happen. It's really, really good. So what happens if the supply chain fails? So let's just say any point of this weakness, let's say the materials get compromised and they're not that high quality. What's the impact to the customer? I think we talked about that a couple of times. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
and we just talked about how in 2022 they had a delay of game because
Hmm.
of the structure, so that that could definitely delay it or just totally cut it off for now. Depending on how big of a delay it is, it's case by case basis. But I'll definitely say at a bare minimum, it would delay the game, which would
Right,
discourage people. Right, going back to we're talking about how it keeps getting bigger and bigger, more people want to jump in. That's momentum that you want to keep going, right? So that the
right,
so that the pocket, the money gets bigger, so people, the winnings are bigger, right? That's more money for the state, that's more tax revenue, that's more money for that person that they can spend. It's just like a
right.
big downward. You could definitely just throw the train off the tracks, any kind of little
Yeah.
delay.
So the center of gravity in this whole supply chain is security, right?
Oh yeah.
Everything must be secured, accounted for, and traceability, which then would take us into a conversation about blockchain and how the value of having blockchain security throughout every step of the process for that traceability of how it was made, quality checks, delivery checks, compromised, not compromised, made sure it ran the appropriate supply chain. So
Or
even here,
another one to rent. Or another
go
one
ahead.
too to rent. It's just like even tickets, right? Imagine you don't have tickets. Kind of
Yeah,
hard to play the game with no tickets.
and
Kind of
that's
hard to play the
happened.
game with no balls. It's just
Yep.
simple stuff like that.
And then people, like you said, they go to get a ticket, not there, they just don't play. There's lack of integrity. There's a security violation. They go, it's rigged. I'm not going to waste my money because I can't win anyway because I'm not on the inside. I'm
Hmm.
not going to be able to play that.
Yep.
So, and then the impact on the economy if more less people play, like you just said, less tax revenue, less revenue for the education system, which is a lot of what these lotteries go for. And they help a lot of states meet their budgets, to be able to pay for a lot, whatever programs they have going on. That's what
Hmm.
this stuff helps. Another way to generate revenue for the community. And then if this doesn't work right, what if we don't have Powerball, what do we play? You got Mega Ball, state lotteries, all different lotteries, but still it comes down to security and maintaining integrity of the supply chain to ensure it's a fair game.
That's right. But
You
you
know,
go back to you said though, and which kind of ties back into supply chain too, loss of customers or loss of players.
right,
If you don't have it and the game's not fair and nobody wants to play it, pot gets smaller and people go play something else, make that pot bigger. Right. So
right,
all the people
yeah,
that are involved with the Powerball, all the employees involved with it, all the organizations involved with Powerball, the government involved in Powerball, now they're losing out. It's
yeah,
really, really important, subject for people
yeah.
participating.
When they talked about like the what's the word, the scandal with Bud Light, and it was one six pack sent to an individual that people didn't like and it had a huge impact and loss of sales. But those loss of sales, although it hurt the shareholders bigger, but like you just described, all the players involved in the manufacturing of beer, the delivery of beer,
Distributors, yep.
distribution of beer, the bartenders that serve the beer, all the
The bar
servers that
owners.
the bar owners, all of that, and the benefit for those further down the supply chain, once you get in the Bud Light supply chain, they have alternatives, right? They can go into get other beers, local beers. so many other choices now besides Bud Light, that people can choose, that they have alternatives. Say, okay, we're not going to serve that. We're going to serve something else, you know. And that's
There's a
where
lot
that,
of competition, and everything,
yeah,
especially in a capitalistic society. There's a lot of competition, and that means you can lose to a whole lot of other people, and they can take your business.
just like
Yeah,
that.
and Bud Light is still suffering from that.
Big time.
There's right or wrong, whatever. We're not talking about. We're just talking about the facts of the impacts, right? And it's literally billions of dollars. Uh,
Yeah, it's not my glasses are crooked, it's my ears are crooked.
that's what it is.
You got a crooked face. I can't about it. Yeah. So that was good. So overall, the summary is, Powerball is a great game. The main thing is you must have security from the customer purchasing a ticket. That ticket has to be the appropriate ticket in the appropriate machine and the right paper to make sure security there. All that data's got to get to the main hub. Then the machines that draw the numbers have to be secured, and there's a process that they use to do that. The balls that they make must be of the appropriate quality so that they are drawn randomly,
Weight
right?
and size, I'm sure.
Weight
Yeah.
and size, yeah. So all that has to be worked out. So all of that has to work together. And like we talked about several times, security is the main driver of
Yeah.
this supply chain.
Yep. And
So,
all the procedures needs to be followed in step, in order. You can't
right,
just like skip over and do whatever. You got to sell a ticket and you got to pull the draw. You got to draw the ball. It can't go out of order.
right. All has to be done correctly and verified and validated,
That's right.
which, things we're not going to go into today, but all that process has to be correct as well. So, all right. Any parting thoughts as we kind of wrap up this one?
Oh, this was a good one. Like you were
Yeah.
talking about. We're gonna start doing more series like this where we talk about key news articles, key events that are happening right now, and we look at it at the lens of a supply chain resilience, and supply
Yeah.
chain in general, and then we explain it. Supply chain explained. Looking forward to doing more of these. Like Randy was saying, if you have any comments, put it in the chat box now. If you want to see anything else, let us know, and we'll do a whole nother episode on something else.
Yeah.
There's
We'll
a
line up
lot to
your
talk about. Everything has a supply chain in it.
everything has a supply chain. So, all right. Well, good. Thanks everyone. And we'll talk to you soon.